Welcome back to another designer profile video, and in this one we're going to look at Caterfae Country Club and Dylan Bronson. Now Dylan in particular focuses on the work of Donald Ross, and many of his designs are inspired by that, pretty much all of them. And this is probably the truest to that in kind of a standard parkland setting, and that's the real reason I wanted to feature this one, to show you that planting doesn't need to be the be-all and end-all, and you can have a really beautiful, crisp looking course just by where you place surfaces, how you bunker, etc. Now this features a lot of those major kind of Donald Ross stylistic points, so push-up greens, bunkers dug in as you'll see to the fairways, and those are really the things that I'd get you to look at here, like how the bunkers can really dig into the fairways to define strategy, and how the green sloping and contouring can be the main defence of a course. This course isn't long, and therefore that's really where the best kind of protection for the course will be. Additionally, I think this one allows you to see realism. This is a course that could very much exist in real life, and it works in an interesting routing that plays off kind of and around one major hillside or spine. And as we zoom up to that major hillside, which houses the 1st, the 10th, the 12th and 6th holes, I think, you'll see that many of the holes are arranged kind of in parallel. And so the other thing that you can really gain from this is how you can use the same feature in multiple different ways, and each of these three holes we'll look at. But if we zoom up a little bit further to the sky, you can see that the routing really works in kind of two major axes. You've got a north-south axis that works out across the property, and then you've got an east-west axis that works kind of along the length of it. And what that means is, although the holes are working in very similar directions, if you're careful with how you design, you can get them to play very differently, but also it really allows you to maximise your use of the space and make sure that you can fit the most holes into quite a small property. And this one has some really interesting hole designs. It's well worth a play just for kind of good comfort golf, although I'd recommend turning the greens maybe down one set if you want to really enjoy it the first time round, because they can be a bit more aggressive on higher speeds. So I'm going to leap in and have a look at a few holes here. So we're going to start, as ever, with the first hole, and it introduces you, as with most of these courses, to the main features of the course. We see that big hill that we're playing down and across, so we've got that interest straight off the tee. There's only the one bunker that really is in play, but you want to decide whether you're carrying that, laying short of it, playing left of it, which brings in the heavy rough on the left, and how far you're leaving into a push-up green. Do you want to pitch into this green, or do you want a lob wedge? Those sorts of questions come in. So a simple hole, but there's actually a lot to it when you look closely. So again, we're going to introduce two par fours as the best par four, because I think they're tied. The third for me is a really interesting one. The fairway looks like it goes on forever, but because of the downhill elevation change, you can't actually see the split in the fairway. And because of the elevation change, you want to be questioning how much club is enough, either to get to the lower portion or the higher portion. And then there's this green, which is heavily contoured. You want a precise approach. You don't want to be chasing pins too much because you don't want to miss the green, but you don't want to play too safe because the green's very contoured. There's a lot to bear in mind with precision on this hole. The best par 5, we're back to that central hill, and we're looking at the 6th hole. Now, it's a straight drive, but again, there's lots of bunkers to catch an errant tee shot, and you want to be right in the landing zone. And you want to be making sure you thread the needle. And it's going to depend on wind and what club distance you've got. Now, for the second shot, this is where it makes it really interesting. The two fronting bunkers means you can't run a ball onto the green. So if it's front pin, you might want to think about where you're laying up. And the mound on the left of the green makes this pin position particularly interesting, because you want to be laying up further to the right, so that you're not hitting that and going through the back. You can go for it in two, and there's a funnel slope on the right that makes it interesting as well. It's a really nuanced hole. The second in the best par 4 holes tied is the 12th, and again we're one step further along on that central axis. Now here it's all about the side hill lie, but mostly on the approach. So you can cling to the high side, and he's bunkered that. Again, you want to be thinking about where you're coming in from. But the key thing with this one's the approach shot, and it's all about ground game on a longer par 4. Got this swale short left of the green that you want to avoid, and bouncing the ball in from the right-hand side of this green is a really fun approach shot. There's also a tiny imperceptible mound at the front of the green that can redirect shots slightly closer to the pin or slightly further away, depending on how close you are. Now for the best par 3, I've chosen the 13th because the green site that's a skyline green is using the hillside in a slightly different way again, and it feels all very connected with the holes around it. As for the hole itself, it's a bit more simple. There's a big back to front slope, so you just want to leave the ball below the hole as much as you can. So it can be easy to leave yourself out of position on this green, similar to the Eden template that we've looked at a lot. Now on a short and quirky course, how would you finish up? Well, it gives us a pitch shot into a very small 18th green that has some interesting mounding contours. And yeah, it's a really quirky finisher, but one that I think is quite a nice way to sum up an interesting round. So what can you really take from this design and use it in your own work? Well, for me, I think there's a couple of things. Firstly is how to take one feature and really maximise it, which you'll hear a lot over the course of this series because the designers for these excellent courses have one very clear vision. Now for this, I think it's this hillside here. And as you can see, he's sighted so many greens. Well, we've got 4 greens playing back towards the clubhouse and numerous tees, so 3 playing off it, each of which we profiled because they're really good holes. Now, it's also then playing away from it and how you then play back up to it. You've got greens nestled at the bottom of the hillside, working up towards the top, getting the views of the clubhouse. We didn't really profile any of those ones. Around and towards, and we then got coming at it from slightly different angles. Now within that, there was then one other feature, which is this creek that kind of bisects this part of the course. Now, it would have been easy to overuse this feature and chuck, and certainly I've been victim of that before, and chuck loads of greens in and around it and try and tuck those. But actually, it plays over it in a really natural way. You play down towards it, but it's never in play. You play over it on quite a few holes. And there's only really the one hole where it looks more visually in play, which is the 3rd, where I think it's used really nicely. So a good example of restraint here. Secondly, I think the other thing I'd take away from this is that bunkering and how it digs in at different points. I think I see so many newer designers who will put down a fairway and then put bunkers to the side of it, where all you're really doing is punishing an already bad shot. Whereas with these, they're strategically placed to make you think, and every single bunker on here, well, most of them has a purpose. So either framing off a sightline, so for 16, you've got these ones that cut in more at a diagonal. So those ones are how much of this do you want to carry for a better look at the tee? Or on this side, it's kind of funneling you into it. Or you have the interesting framing bunkers. I'm just looking for some examples. Would be like on the 8th, this bunker is never in play. You're never laying up to 180 yards. But it does make you think about how much you want if you're trying to stay short of this bunker. And it adds kind of a bit more drama to the tee shot. The same is true on 13. None of these ever in play, but they flesh out the tee shot so nicely and help you frame it. And then you have fronting bunkers that mean that the green is disconnected. This green would look pretty terrible if we didn't have any of these bunkers here. It would be a question of why haven't we joined the fairway? They can allow you to make those sorts of decisions. Same with 17. They're for visual drama. That in real life would look a little bit more scary than just hitting up a hillside. So I think the bunkering is one thing I'd really take away from this course. Overall, it's a really interesting course when you dig into it. Do give it and a number of his other courses, which are a bit more dramatic, a play, and hope you enjoy.